This is Town Square Sunday on demand. And now, 1420 WBSM's Jim Phillips.
It's time again for Jack Spillane, columnist from New Bedford Light. That's an online newspaper covering New Bedford and surrounding communities. Jack joins us every few weeks to offer his thoughts on some of the major stories in the region, and it's good to see you again, Jack.
Good to be here, Jim.
Recently, you wrote a piece about the importance of school libraries, some of which are being phased out in our area, or have already been phased out. Your education reporter, Colin Hogan, did a terrific job in reporting about this. And in your piece, you wrote about the importance of libraries to you personally. Tell us about that.
So when I was growing up, I went to St. John's Prep, which was a very good Catholic private school on the North Shore where I grew up. And the library was sort of my refuge. I went out for a lot of sports teams, didn't make any of them. I was on the school paper. I was on the school yearbook staff, but the library was really my home. And it was a revelation to me because in grade school, we didn't have that. And you could have librarians that just showed you how to use the card catalog and opened up a whole world of, atlases and, adventure stories, politics, everything I could ever wanted. So library, as I said in my column, didn't make me a good reader, but it opened up lots of worlds to me that I probably wouldn't have gotten to in class.
It really is important. Now, a brief story. When I was in the Army, I was stationed at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And it was during the summertime, so often your day would end like at noontime because it was too warm to really go out, do calisthenics, drive a truck, all those kinds of crazy things. And so I would go to the library. I think I was the only GI in the library, but that's okay. But I had the same experience. It enabled me to catch up on things that were happening at home, newspapers, all of those kinds of things. And it opened up a world of reading to me that I always was a reader, but it just was a very pleasant thing to have during that time. So Hogan recently reported on the demise of school libraries. Apparently it's happening all around us, not just New Bedford.
Yeah, I was shocked to know that Fairhaven High School does not have a library, and even Dartmouth, which has always been prided for the quality of its school system, has no libraries in the elementary schools anymore. The feeling seems to be, Jim, that in an internet age, you can get so many things through the Chromebooks. Everybody at New Bedford High School does have an e-reader or a Chromebook, and so they have access to things, but a lot of a library is the newspapers, the librarian's skills in showing you how to find things. And I don't know that everybody always necessarily finds everything on an e-reader. I'm sure the school has some restrictions on what they get there, but the library is also a place dedicated just to reading time. And I think it's nice for kids to read things that are not class assignments. And so I don't think it's a good development.
So you don't buy the argument that computers and phones can easily replace libraries and books in general?
No, and some of the librarians who spoke in Colin's piece said that some of the schools that have taken out the libraries have brought them back because they found that they actually have a big role to play in kids being good readers. I think Superintendent O'Leary talked about literacy specialists are really needed in New Bedford because of the large number of English as a second language students. And, you have a limited budget. You're faced with, do I hire the literary specialist or do I hire the librarians? And the librarians say, we are literary specialists plus more. Now, literary specialist is a little bit different skill, so I don't want to, but they did have some statistics to show that kids who use libraries become better readers.
Is it your fear that closing school libraries may somehow be related to protests by parents who are protesting books that are available to their youngsters in the libraries?
Well, Mr. O'Leary did use the term, they have access to all the books that are appropriate. And, of course, that leads you to believe is who decides what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Certainly the parents should have a role in that. But librarians often will want access for kids to have different ways of looking at things that maybe their parents might not approve of. You know, we heard a lot in...
So closing the library is a way to avoid that controversy.
Maybe. I'm not I think these library closures began before that. I mean, we had that controversy in Tri-Town this year.
Yes, we did.
And a little bit in Dartmouth, I think. So it's certainly on people's minds. But I think that what really has led to the closure of libraries is this feeling that hardcover books are not as necessary anymore. And, of course, everything is not online is my feeling. So I think they are.
Well, libraries, are they about literacy? I mean, I know that librarians think that they are literacy teachers and more. Your thoughts in your piece, I think you wrote about school libraries can amplify literacy, produce more confident readers. Are school leaders missing the point about libraries?
I think they are. I think that there is a role for libraries in reading things that, as I just said, are not assignments, and where the kid discovers for themselves what they want to read, whether it's newspapers from home, whether it's the sports page, whether it's, I don't know, magazines. National Geographic was a favorite of mine when I was in the libraries. I think, reading for pleasure and also videos now are often in the libraries. If you go to the downtown library in New Bedford, they have 8 computer screens, and I've been in there when all 8 of them were being watched. So I think there's something to be said for introducing to kids outside of classroom reading in the school library.
You're listening to Town Square Sunday. I'm Jim Phillips. My guest is Jack Spillane. He's a columnist for New Bedford Light. You can read Jack's work and much more at newbedfordlight.org. Well, here's something else I didn't know, Jack. And I didn't know that there was that these libraries are being phased out. I'm surprised about that. But here's something else I didn't know until I read New Bedford Light. New Bedford has more homeschool students than any other community in Massachusetts.
Wasn't that just a wonderful story? Not wonderful news, necessarily. Maybe it is. But a fact that none of us would have known. Who would have thought that there are more homeschool students in much bigger cities like Boston and Worcester? I'm not quite convinced as to what the reasons for all this are. They say the pandemic started some of it, but the pandemic was not just in New Bedford. They say some of it is parents who don't like the cultural values of the schools, but that would not just be in New Bedford either. Yeah. There's something going on where it's really caught on. The numbers were also high in the SouthCoast suburbs, but not as high as in New Bedford.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of astounding. I mean, I think you think of parents in New Bedford, they're working parents. Both of them have to work to kind of survive. And the kids go to school. And yet now we're talking about some are being taught by their parents, others being taught in a kind of a cooperative thing, I think, as I read. I mean, it's kind of surprising.
I think the most distressing part of this story to me was that there are not any standards, really, and no one is watching as to how much progress the kids are making, so they don't have to take...
MCAS testing.
No MCAS testing, and they don't have to... I mean, you have to take the parents' word that they're doing the instruction or having somebody else do the instruction, and that the kid is making progress. And in the public school system, whatever you want to say about it, there is someone, teaching every day and measuring the progress of the kid.
I mean, I think that's an important part of education. When you go to school, you're always being assessed as to how much progress you're making. I know that some kids don't respond to that as well as others, but the fact is that's what education is all about.
Yeah, I'm not saying testing is everything and that there aren't problems with it, but there are no standards at all, as I understood from Colin's story. So you really don't know. Maybe some of the kids are are having a wonderful experience with homeschooling, and maybe others whose parents, as you say, are busy and don't have as many skills, are not having as wonderful experience.
I thought it was an amazing story to read, and it was also done by Colin Hogan, and it really raises a question: what is going on here? Okay, you tell me this might be happening in Dartmouth or Mattapoisett or Marion. Okay, I understand some of that, but in New Bedford, where two parents have to work most places,
and happening to a greater extent than any place else.
Any other place.
It's happening everywhere, but it's happening more in New Bedford than anywhere.
I think it's something we got to look at a little bit further. Hopefully, we can get some people to talk about it. I want to talk also about your panel discussion this week at the New Bedford Art Museum. It was entitled "Rising Seas and Coastal Impacts." I guess the Light had a story earlier about sea levels and what could lie ahead for these coastal communities, including New Bedford. Did you attended the presentation?
I did, and we had 130 plus people there at the Art Museum last night. Mm-hmm. Many people wanting to know what's happening. Adam Goldstein, our environmental reporter, did a wonderful story about a week ago about sea level rising on the South Coast. And we had a table where you could put in your address and you would find out how much it was expected to rise in your town. And you could see a map of your town as to what parts of the town were most in danger.
So you're telling me you could see a map that would show your home possibly underwater?
No, I don't think it had an illustration of your home underwater.
No.
But it had a map that showed this is the area and this is how much we expect it to rise. And if your home was located on that shoreline there, then you knew that you might be in trouble.
Yeah. Better buy stilts. Okay, so it was interesting. A lot of folks went, 130 people, which is a lot for the Art Museum, not a big space. And who were the speakers?
So we had a panel of speakers, and I'm going to draw a blank on all their names, but I know that John Bullard was one of them. Okay. And we had two people from the Department of Environmental Protection and another person who was an expert on federal government reimbursement through FEMA and how FEMA is out of money. And we're having so many natural catastrophes that one of these days people are going to wake up and say, well, we're sorry, but we can't reimburse you to the value of your home. You built it on the edge of the water.
Yeah. I mean, it's a problem that not a lot of folks, I'm thankful these 130 people are thinking about it. It's not something we lose a lot of sleep over, especially if you're not living by the coastline. Yeah.
There was also a lot of information about the disappearance of wetlands.
Yep.
And when wetlands, clean the water and also serve as a buffer for the land, and how we better be careful. Massachusetts has strong wetlands laws, but people get around them, and so the wetlands are endangered.
Yeah. All right. So education, environment. We haven't touched on the city council yet, but and I have no information about the council to talk about. But I would say when the council meets, we'll talk again. Now you mentioned Jack and I converse a little bit before we do this show, and licensing board you mentioned. I could find nothing recent about the licensing board. What do you know that I don't?
Well, actually, WBSM has done a lot of reporting on this issue. The
NIPS?
Chris McCarthy and Tim Weisberg. So the issue of the way appointments have been made to the licensing board has been a matter of controversy. I guess one of the individuals didn't show up for his hearing before the city council. The city council committee, I think, had a negative recommendation, but then some councilors reconsidered and thought the mayor should have his person that he wants, his appointment. And so this relates to the NIP ban, of course, which has been delayed, but it's still coming, I think, next summer. And whether that is a good way to take care of the problem of NIPS or whether it is unfair to the liquor store owners.
Yeah, the liquor store owners are pretty well up in arms about this. They really don't like the idea. A good part of their revenue are these nip bottles. So it's...
Yeah. I think the mayor feels that it's both a litter and a social problem, particularly in some urban sections of the city.
All right, Jack. We'll leave it there. Thanks for coming in. My guest has been Jack Spillane, columnist for New Bedford Light. You can read Jack's work at newbedfordlight.org. Still more to come on Town Square Sunday. Stay with us.